So thank you all for coming. I'm super excited about this conversation with Jay. And as you mentioned, we're going to just chat for a little bit, and then I'm going to throw it all to you to ask some great questions. So start thinking about them now. And so Jay, why don't we just start off? I always start off when I'm talking with visitors to my class, how you got to where you got.
First, thanks for being here. Thanks, Dean Marchek, whom I've known for a really long time, and the whole Kogod team for having me. Really, really a pleasure to be with you all. First and foremost, I'm a Midwest native. I grew up in the Detroit, Michigan area. As Tommy said, I attended University of North Carolina, Chapel Hill, was a business major, immediately moved to New York and started my career in finance, where I started at JP Morgan and moved eventually into the private equity industry. Got my MBA, came back to private equity, and have been doing that ever since then. And it's been an incredibly rewarding career that's taken a number of turns along the way, but I eventually found a real passion, which is investing behind disruptive, high-growth consumer brands, which is where my firm now spends 100% of its time. And I have a great deal of passion and energy and excitement for that. And again, we'll spend a lot of time talking about that. Married, my husband is actually here in the front row. We met as classmates at Harvard Business School. We now live in Cambridge, Massachusetts, right across the river from Harvard Business School. We have two boys who are 15 and 12, soon to be 16 and 13, a high school sophomore and a seventh grader who keep us quite busy. This is the first time the two of us have been away from them as the two of us for quite some time. So this is what we do on our evenings away from our children. But it's a real pleasure to be here and really grateful for the time.
So what attracts you to specifically brands and investing in brand value type companies? What is it that differentiates them for you?
Well, first, I've learned a lot over the years. When I started, my career investing in brands started at Carlyle, which began in 2006 when I was recruited to the firm. And I had the benefit of learning from a lot of people who had been doing it for many years ahead of me. And for those of you who have an interest in the finance business and in private equity in particular, or investing in particular, it is an apprenticeship business. You learn everything from the people who have been doing a lot longer than you have. And I'm really privileged to have learned from a lot of smart people. And I think where I developed my passion and my interest and my energy for it is just by touching and feeling and experiencing a lot of companies, and importantly, a lot of founders who took great ideas, turned them into great businesses, and then brought us along for the journey to help them accomplish their goals. These are human beings who often have succeeded against the odds. People have told them they're never going to win. There are so many obstacles in their way. I think that's true of a lot of entrepreneurs. There are a lot of reasons not to be an entrepreneur, a lot of reasons not to try. But the people that we've had the privilege of backing have been, some of the most successful across the consumer industry. And when we get to be a part of that for a brief chapter and to do a few things to amplify their voice and to find ways to get the great products or the great ideas or the great brands that they've created into more consumers' hands, it's a really, really gratifying experience. Obviously, we're in business to generate returns for our investors. That's the primary focus of what we do in the investing industry. But the personal satisfaction that we get from helping these amazing people grow and win and introduce their products to more people around the world is really, really exciting for me. And I look back now over the last 2 decades of my career, and some of the businesses that I've been around, were mentioned in the introduction. They're in many ways like children. We don't. This is not like what I do is not like venture capital where you make 100 investments and maybe a handful of them grow really well. It's a very concentrated strategy where you're focused on 2 or 3 investments at a time, and we put all of our heart and all of our energy and all of our resources into helping them win. And when we do, it's really, really fun. And fun should be one of your primary goals in your career. I think if you're not having fun, you shouldn't be doing what you're doing. You should figure out something else to do with your time, because life is short and you need to be having fun and working with people you enjoy. And my journey brought me serendipitously to this consumer investing career, and it has been really, really fun.
I echo that. Absolutely. Got to have fun. You mentioned that some of these entrepreneurs, and if you look at some of them you worked with, they're celebrities that have their own brand, and then they're building a business with the brand. How do you guide them and advise them to differentiate their personal brand from the business, or can you even do that?
Well, I think if you go back in time, it has been actually quite difficult for well-known people to use the brands that they have generated in their way of being known. So maybe it's an athlete, or maybe it's a musical artist, or an actor, or a performer of some sort. Very few of them have successfully translated that brand into actually creating equity value or enterprise value as an entrepreneur. And I think the reason that works that way is, if you ever spend any time in LA, where a lot of those people are, there are a lot of structural impediments to their ability to create equity value, because there are a lot of people in the way. A lot of the ecosystem that surrounds well-known people are focused on their compensation coming in the near term. There's not a patient way for them to wait a decade or 20 years like it often takes to really build a business and really create equity value. And as a result, those people often will steer their celebrity or their well-known talent towards near-term cash flow streams, which is not about long-term value creation. It's about creating a royalty stream, creating cash, so that I, the manager, or I, the agent, can generate the commission and be paid. And there are a lot of wonderful people who do that, including Scooter, who I mentioned. One of the things I admired about Scooter, Scooter Braun is a very well-known artist manager. As Tommy said, he was most well known for discovering Justin Bieber and eventually managed Ariana Grande and J Balvin and Demi Lovato and a whole host of other artists. Scooter figured out really early the opportunity for his artists to build brands that are bigger than just their performing careers, because often performing careers are very short. And if he, as their manager, is looking to protect them and to enable them to have very long careers well into the future, those careers need to extend well beyond their ability to perform and fill stadiums with crowds. And one of the things that attracted me to Scooter as a partner was his foresight on how to do that. It is really hard. There has to be a really authentic connection between what that well-known person creates as a consumer brand and what the consumer actually wants or expects from that artist. Consumers are smarter and more powerful than they've ever been because of the devices that we all get to carry around with us. Artists and athletes and famous people can't fake it. Not that they necessarily could fake it in the past, but in the sense of the way they communicate to consumers today needs to be real. And if you start with a really good idea, surround that idea with really smart people who help them grow and win and create businesses in the long term, those are the types of things that attracted us. I think Beats by Dr. Dre is a perfect example of that. Dr. Dre was obviously a very well-known recording artist and performing artist and producer and sound engineer. He could have easily licensed his name to a whole host of headphone companies and collected 5% of revenue for some period of time, but he thankfully, together with his partners and ultimately with our support, recognized the opportunity to actually build a business and build a company. And as a result, we were able to help that company sell itself to Apple for $3 billion less than 10 years after it started. Those sadly are more rare than they should be, but thankfully they're becoming more common than they have in the past, because people are beginning to understand that marriage of great idea, authentic person that's connected to it, ability to amplify the brand, the capital support that needs to come behind it, and the people that need to be involved to help it reach its potential. And that's something that we hope to be a part of.
Yeah, so those don't know, I worked a lot in Hollywood. I know how busy these people are. I also know how hard it is, not that I've done it, but watch others start a business. It's a lot of work for a founder. So how do you help guide these talent artists who have a full-time job performing or creating content and also trying to start a business? What does your organization do to help support that? And what do you do?
So first, I'll say a few things. One, we don't only work with artists or famous people with respect to their creation of brands. We want to work with anybody who's come up with a good idea and has commercialized it into a business that's of scale, that's generating profit and positive unit economics and a strong consumer value proposition, helping them win. Increasingly so, many of those businesses have celebrities attached to them in varying degrees. By the time we get there at our stage of investing, because we're not venture capitalists, we're not seed investors, by the time we get there, those businesses have already achieved some level of scale. And so I would never take any credit at all for the hard work and tenacity and tuning out of the noise that it takes for entrepreneurs of any sort, whether famous or not, to turn that idea into a business and brand. What we do is get to know them learn what they want from us, learn what they do not want from us, learn what they know that they're good at, figure out what they believe that they're not good at. And self-awareness is a really important component of an entrepreneur's ability to succeed. I meet a lot of entrepreneurs who are not very self-aware, and they think they're good at everything they do. And there's not a human being on the planet that is good at everything that he or she tries to do. And so we look for people who understand their own personal limitations and want help in certain areas. And it's not about trying to do 15 or 20 things in a mediocre way. It's about identifying the 2 or 3 things that we can do to help move the needle with those businesses. And it's different in every set of circumstances. There is no one-size-fits-all playbook for helping an entrepreneur amplify his or her business into achieving the scale that they hope to achieve, or achieving the scale that the brand deserves. We spend a tremendous amount of time as we get to know the founders, the executive teams, and ultimately the brands, studying what consumers want. There's a tremendous amount of science behind this. It's what you do every day. And I think there is often a perception out there that we are, that there's a lot of art in what we do, that we are just picking brands and, almost like a runway show where, looks are going by you and you pick the ones that you like. That is not what we do. That's how we start the top of our funnel. We ideate on where we want to spend our time based on our intuition and experience. But ultimately, we make our investment decisions based on consumer data and what the consumers say. And we work with data scientists and people who really understand how to ask consumers the right questions to understand their intent, their behavior, their desire for the brand's ability to move into new channels, new categories, new geographies, all of the different things that can be different vectors of growth for a brand. And we use a lot of science to make our decisions and ultimately to align that with a value creation plan that works with the partners that we're investing behind.
So if I'm understanding you correctly, before you make an investment, you kind of have like the beginning, top of your funnel, thinking about different company areas. Then you pull in your own research to do kind of your due diligence before you make your final decision whether or not to invest.
Absolutely. And I'll tell you that it starts with having a phenomenal team. I had a great career that I spent nearly 17 years at Carlyle, a DC-based firm. I was saying today when Nir and I were coming down, the number of times that I've taken the shuttle into Washington to come to Carlyle meetings, I think this is one of the first times I've come to Washington not to go to a Carlyle meeting. I left the firm a couple of years ago to start something new, and one of the most fun parts has been to build a team of people who come from a variety of different firms. There's no one working at my firm who came from Carlyle other than me. And that was intentional, not because I didn't love my team or didn't love Carlyle, but because I wanted to create a team that drew from people with a variety of different experiences. We are 14 people today. We're more than 2/3 women. We are people from a variety of different private equity firms, a variety of different backgrounds, so that we can all come together in every step of the way of the investment process, from idea generation, theme identification, how we identify the tailwinds that are going to drive brands across all categories, to then zero in on the categories themselves or the brands within those categories that we think are most attractive. And then most importantly, finding people who have the energy and the drive and the enthusiasm to go out and get to know every single founder. We can get to know whether that's a brand that we'll invest in next week, next month, next year, 10 years from now. People who recognize that the effort that they put into getting to know those companies at a minimum will be a great learning experience, and in the best circumstances will turn into an investment opportunity that generates returns for our investors. And that team element of what we do is critically important.
So that leads me then to your current venture. Kim Kardashian is a partner. How did you get introduced to Kim? And I just got to ask, what surprised you about Kim when you got to know her that you didn't expect?
Sure. So we are, I think from the outsider's perspective, we're an unlikely pair of business partners. And I was introduced to Kim about a decade ago by another entrepreneur, a woman named Anastasia Soare. For those of you who know the brand Anastasia Beverly Hills, she is, I see a lot of heads nodding. Anastasia is an extraordinary entrepreneur that I got to know when her business was very small, and got to observe her building one of the great beauty businesses that's been created, and ultimately TPG, a big investment firm, invested behind her business. I was in LA to see Anastasia, and she texted me. I remember exactly where I was sitting. She texted me and said, "Do you mind?" I was having dinner with her at the Polo Lounge at the Beverly Hills Hotel, and she texted me, and it's very Hollywood. And she texted me and said, "Do you mind if I invite my friend Kim?" And I said, "Of course, please do." And Anastasia knew Kim because Kim and her family were clients of Anastasia Beverly Hills. And Anastasia, through her friendship with Kim, recognized Kim's evolution from being a brand builder and a sort of celebrity in her own right to being someone who wanted to become an entrepreneur and grow and win. And Anastasia believed that Kim could benefit from knowing someone like me from the investment world. Similarly, Anastasia recognized that I could benefit from knowing someone like Kim, whose finger is on the pulse of culture, her ability to see and understand what's happening with consumers all around the world across categories, and really helping me point my compass in the right direction from an investment perspective, really believe that it would be a friendship that would pay off for both of us. And indeed it was. Interestingly, at that dinner, not only did Kim come walking in and sat down, but at the time she was married to her now ex-husband, Kanye West, and he joined us for dinner as well. And so I had this incredibly surreal 2.5-hour dinner where I have Anastasia on my left and Kanye was just to my right, and Kim was to his right. And over the course of time, we just got to know each other very, very privately. Very few people knew that we were getting to know one another and becoming professional friends. We're not social friends. We don't hang out together on weekends. But through the course of spending a lot of time together, developed what I think are the two most important aspects of business partnership, which are trust and mutual respect. And we did so, again, very, very privately over the course of time. And so when my career was evolving and I was at the time in my mid-40s in the private equity world, that is the time when a lot of people sort of step back and think about, do I want to finish my career where I am, or do I want to step out and start something or do something new? Because private equity careers are written in sort of multiple decades, not days or years. And so as I was evaluating that, I saw through my experience in the consumer investing world the opportunity to build a new firm myself. I again, had this incredible experience over nearly 20 years working with a lot of entrepreneurs who are innovating in shampoo and innovating in headphones and innovating in streetwear and innovating in skincare. I saw an opportunity to innovate in the business that I had been a part of for decades, and to bring together a team that we've built of world-class investment professionals, people who have the experiences and the personalities and the values that are really important to succeeding as an investment team, but to complement that with an individual in Kim who, as I said earlier, is someone who can really add a lot to our ability to see the future, to leverage her experience as an entrepreneur. She is one of those individuals who has turned celebrity into enterprise value, most notably with Skims. And that unique experience that she has, allowing her to be empathetic to the founders that we work with, allowing her to support our investment team as we make decisions, was something that we saw as an opportunity to create something really distinctive in a market that had not had a lot of innovation over time. So that's how it came together. We announced the formation of our firm just about 2 years ago, September of 2022. And we've built a team. We are based in Boston, and we made our first investment in January in a truffle-infused hot sauce company called Truff. If you've not tried it, please do. And we are off to the races building what we believe will be a really great firm. And back to what I said a few minutes ago, we're having a lot of fun.
That's awesome. So, you also said, so you have this one investment, and the idea of the company is maybe another one, and then focus.
We are, it's interesting. Again, I'm learning a lot as an entrepreneur. Simultaneously, we are building a firm, creating culture, raising a private equity fund, deploying that private equity capital, and then spending a lot of time with our one portfolio company, hopefully soon to be two portfolio companies. It's sort of all hands on deck, and I'm learning every single day from the people that I work with, and I'm expanding my mind and getting new reps in the gym at exercises that I've never tried before, which is great. It's been incredibly rewarding, particularly at this stage of my career. But we're raising a private equity fund that will ultimately invest in what I think will be 6 to 8 companies over the next 3 or 4 years. The idea is that we invest in a company, we try to help make it better, and eventually either through selling that company to a strategic acquirer, selling that company to another private equity investor, or maybe taking that company public, hopefully create a great return for our investors. So we're hopefully close to investment number 2, which is an investment in the skincare market, which is a category that I know and love and have a lot of experience in. And my partner Kim obviously has built a skincare company called Skin by Kim, and it's a really attractive category, and we're hopefully, knock on wood, knock on whatever, a couple of weeks away from announcing our second deal.
My digital marketing students are going to tell you that it's all influencer-based marketing for that. So I know when we were talking earlier, Dave was telling me the work that you did at Carlyle in the LGBTQ plus space, and that you were really active as a supporter in that space in an environment that wasn't the friendliest. What were some of the things that you did, and what were some of the lessons you took out of that to help support your fellow LGBTQ plus?
Sure. So when I joined Carlyle in 2006, it's an interesting story because prior to that point in time, I had never been out at work. And it doesn't feel like it was that long ago, 2006, but it was in the era of the development of where LGBTQ people stand in the professional work environment, particularly in the finance world. There's been a tremendous amount of progress and development that's taken place since that point in time, but I used a job change, moving from one firm to Carlyle, as an opportunity to begin to more authentically bring myself to work and show my colleagues who I was. And at that time, it was interesting. I started at Carlyle in April of 2006. Nir and I got married in August of 2006, so I almost had to talk about it out of necessity because we had a really fabulous 2-week honeymoon planned in August of 2006, and that's a weird time to take 2 months off, 2 weeks off, 3 or 4 months after you start. But I used it as an opportunity. And from that point going forward, all the way to sort of the early 2010, 11 period, I didn't know of any other out professionals who identified LGBTQ plus at our firm. I knew they were there. I just didn't know who they were. And this was by no means because of any animus that I perceived or any problems, other than just the lack of our industry's evolution in the way that it needed to evolve. And as I progressively became more experienced and as I became progressively more senior in the organization and more visible, it's something I believe very strongly that people have a responsibility to be visible leaders when they are in a position to be able to influence an organization, not just in this respect, but in almost every respect. Dean Marchek, I know you all know what an incredible leader he is, but he importantly is a very good friend of mine and was a mentor of mine almost from day one when I joined Carlyle. And the work that he did as an ally to me individually, but eventually to the larger population of people who either identified LGBTQ plus or who were incredibly supportive of our community within the firm, really helped me have my voice and our community's voice be more heard at the most senior levels of our organization, so that over the course of time, and these are the days that predated same-sex marriage, these are the days that predated domestic partner benefits. The domestic partner benefits are words that probably are very rarely used these days because of, thankfully, the evolution that we've come to, but there were a lot of companies that did not offer benefits to same-sex partners, even if you were in a long-term committed relationship living together in the same way that more traditionally defined relationships were given those benefits. And I'm eternally grateful to Dave for his leadership at that level. And it's something I'll never forget, working with him, from my seat, his seat, making our voices heard, and ultimately achieving Carlyle offering domestic partner benefits to all of our employees. Fast forward a few years later, we ultimately achieved a 100 rating on the Human Rights Campaign's Corporate Equality Index. And if you had told me in 2006 that Carlyle, or any private equity firm for that matter, would achieve a 100 rating on the Corporate Equality Index for the Human Rights Campaign, I would have told you you're crazy. It's never going to happen. But it's something I'm really proud of, and I think it's a responsibility that we all have, not just to do our jobs, but also to leave an impact on our organization so that it's better off than it was when we leave it than it was when we arrived.
I totally agree with you. All right, so opening it up to questions now. Okay, why don't you yell it out and Jay will repeat it. Go for it.
Okay, thank you, Melissa. Thank you so much, Jay, for taking the time to be here, by the way. I appreciate all the insights. So I'm curious to know, just
Introduce yourself of what you're studying.
yeah, of course. So I'm Caleb. I'm a third year business administration, technology, and entrepreneurship student, led by the great Professor Tommy White. That's right here. And my question has to do with really the rise of, with the rise of content creators that are creating a bunch of brands, especially around consumer goods like Logan Paul and KSI. How do you perceive the rise of consumer good brands created by these content creators as an investor? And what sticks out to you if you would want to invest in one of these content creator-led brands? I'm just curious of your thoughts on that.
Thanks for the question. Nice to meet you, Caleb. So I don't actually look at them terribly differently than I would look at any brand that we would evaluate. I just think it's a new way for a brand to have a voice in a way that's actually much more commonly connected with from a consumer perspective. That's the new channel through which consumers are learning about things. And so individuals who have a lot of presence through those channels are the new versions of the brand ambassadors of prior generations or the paid celebrity promoters of generations before that. And many of them are rightfully trying to figure out how they can take their platforms in the same way that we talked about other celebrities. These are celebrities in their own right. And turn those platforms into equity value creation. I have a lot of respect for and admiration for people who are out there being entrepreneurs in any sense. But at the end of the day, what they create needs to be distinctive in the minds of consumers. So the product needs to resonate with consumers both in a functional way. It needs to be something that the consumer needs. And if it's a food, it needs to taste really good and provide nutritional value or whatever it is that that's trying to do. If it's a piece of apparel, it needs to be something the consumer needs to wear. If it's a beauty product, it needs to be something that delivers functionally to consumers. But on the other hand, it also needs to drive emotional connectivity with the consumer. It needs to make the consumer feel good when the consumer is using it. It needs to motivate that consumer to want to amplify that voice more broadly. I think a lot of content creators have very low-cost customer acquisition platforms, but low-cost customer acquisition is not the only tool to creating a great brand. You ultimately need to deliver a phenomenal product that the consumer needs and really feels good about so that the consumers can be the next voice that amplifies the power of that brand to lots and lots of other consumers. If you think about a brand or a content creator who has 1 million followers or 5 million or 10 million followers on TikTok or Instagram or some other platform, you pretty quickly run out of consumers that are just in that community if you're only reliant on yourself as the voice of the brand. But if you're delivering something that's great that the consumer needs, that delivers on what it says it's going to deliver on, and that makes the consumer feel good, then they turn into your next empowering, generation of consumers who can help that product grow and win. So I look at them very similarly to the way that I would look at a brand that someone who's not a content creator, created. You see a lot of people out there trying to make a quick buck, honestly. They throw a low quality product up on Instagram or on TikTok because they can make a lot of money really, really fast. But if the consumer tries it and it doesn't taste good, or if it doesn't fit well, or if it falls apart, or if they don't really need it, they'll try it once, they'll never come back. The creator makes a lot of money in a short period of time, but they don't make a lot of money in a long period of time like people do who are focused on long-term value creation. Thanks for the question, Caleb.
Good question. Sure.
Thank you for lovely conversation. I'm Charlie again. I'm a sophomore, studying business administration with a concentration in entrepreneurship. I'm curious, let me hesitate, I've not taken a supply chain management class, so I was just curious, I presume that when you're engaging with a new startup or a new company that you might want to invest in, how do you advise them? Because I presume the people, your backers, they have millions and millions of followers. How do you advise them when the marketing comes out that not everything goes out like that, to make sure that the quality stays sustained throughout the process?
It's a great question, Charlie, because, and thank you for it. Nice to meet you. This goes back to what I was saying a few minutes ago about self-awareness. And starting a business and building a great business and going through all the ups and downs that it takes to build a great business requires a lot of humility. It requires a lot of patience. It requires a lot of really, really hard work and rolling up of sleeves to succeed. It's not all glamorous. It's not all the, TikTok ads that go viral or the things that you might see on the front of a brand. It requires, as you're pointing out, a tremendous amount of hard work on the back end to make it happen. That's everything from supply chain to quality to distribution to having a tech stack that actually works and that can respond to consumer demand. Like I can go on and on and on about all the enabling components of a business. The best entrepreneurs that I've seen are the ones who figure out what they're best at, and they go really, really deep at it. But then they surround themselves with people who are able to do the other parts that they don't know how to do. Very interesting business that I invested in, not a celebrity brand, but back in 2014, we invested in a hair care company called OGX. Todd Christopher, the founder of that business, was a 6th-generation hairdresser. He did not finish high school. He's one of the most outstanding entrepreneurs I've ever had the privilege to be around. He was underestimated because he was not, he didn't speak Harvard Business School speak. He didn't have that sort of polish that a lot of people wanted to see, but what most people who underestimated didn't realize was that he was outrunning all of the people that were perceived to be polished, because he'd actually created a phenomenal brand and a phenomenal suite of products that ultimately we sold to Johnson & Johnson for $3.3 billion 8 years after he started the brand. But what Todd did so brilliantly was Todd knew he was really good at product formulation. He knew he was really good at marketing and packaging. Todd did not know, based on his experience, how to sell into Walmart, Target, Walgreens, Costco, every other platform. He brought in a team of people who knew how to sell. Todd did not know supply chain and manufacturing, so he partnered with a manufacturing partner who was able to operationalize a business that was selling millions and millions and millions of bottles of shampoo, which is hard to do when you're selling them for $6 a bottle, to do that efficiently, effectively, and in a high-quality way. He did not know how to expand the brand internationally, because he's based in Clearwater Beach, Florida. And so that was one of the big aspects of his partnership with us. We talked to him about where he wanted to go and what would ultimately result in the brand having maximum value. And it was about bringing on people and partners and relationships outside the U.S. to prove that the brand would travel. Todd was incredibly self-aware about what he knew and what he did not know. We knew where we could get involved and where he did not want us involved. And it's about getting to know those people and building really trusting relationships so that your value creation plan is aligned and you work together just to figure it out. And in my experience, usually, as I said earlier, there are 2 or 3 things you have to figure out. You don't have to figure out 15 things. You don't have to figure out 12 things. You have to figure out 2 or 3 things that you do really, really, really well, put a lot of devotion of energy and resources into them, and it will result in very good things. It's different in every set of circumstances. Some brands need more help in marketing. Some need more help in operations. Some need more help in product development. Some need more help in international growth. Some need more help in channel expansion. You never really know until you get in there and look under the covers. But when you look under the covers and you see it, you try to match it with the pattern recognition of the past. Think about people that you know who can match with what that brand or that company needs. Bring it all together and make sure you're really aligned. And once you're really aligned, then you lock arms and go get it together. Sure. Thanks for the question.
Oh, wow. No, you'll hand out the microphone. Perfect. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Summer Zhou. I'm a master in sustainability management, where I focus on sustainability and ESG impact of a company. My question for you is, you work with celebrity who have brands. So under circumstance that a celebrity's public image is going under a crisis, that will impact their brand's performance and their sales. Vice versa, if the brand they're selling, the quality, the products is impacting a celebrity's public image, if it's not performing well. What's your strategy and how would you combat a problem like this?
It's an excellent question. Thank you for that, and nice to meet you. So I think it's one of the reasons why I have such tremendous respect for my partner in particular. And, she, if you look at her history, controversy has come to Kim over time. She's invited into anything and everything. I mean, she's so well known globally. She has such a large platform. Other members of her family have such a large platform that people want to hear what they think about things, and people want the sizzle of a controversy with a famous person or a famous family. The discipline that she has had and that her family has had of avoiding being enticed into those types of controversial things is something that I really admire a lot about her. And not every celebrity, not every famous person, whether athlete or performing artist or celebrity of any sense, has that type of discipline, and it takes a lot of hard work. I mean, there's a whole apparatus and a machine that surrounds wise people with respect to brand management. Is brand management. Kim Kardashian is a brand. Dr. Dre, when I was with, is a brand. There are a lot of people who are brands in their own right, and they have to manage that very, very carefully, very, very cautiously. There are some who are more disciplined than others. The second part of your question about how the brands or the products that they create or the companies that they create reflect on them and how they reflect on those companies is another aspect of the differentiation that I see between those who are disciplined and those who are not. It comes back to what we were talking about a little bit earlier: quality, delivering something that consumers really need, building businesses and brands that are over time less dependent on that celebrity's name, image, and likeness to be successful over time. If you look at Skims, while Kim still does post a lot on her own personal Instagram about Skims, if you actually look at Skims content, Kim has less and less and less visible over time because the long-term value creation for that brand is all about it being a phenomenal clothing company that offers high-quality products across a lot of different categories to a diverse set of women all around the world. That cannot be dependent on Kim Kardashian if it's going to be the 5, 10, 15, $20 billion company that it has the potential to be. And she's been incredibly methodical about doing that. The closer a celebrity stays to a brand, the more risk that you're describing there is. And so I think the smart celebrities, the smart founders, the smart investors are ones that appropriately manage that risk over long periods of time. It's not a risk that can be turned to zero. It is inherent in brands with very visible people. But I would argue that there are a lot of non-celebrity people who also present risks to their businesses based on their own personal behaviors or the choices that they make or bad decisions that they choose to make over time. And whether celebrities or not, when you have a key person or a really important part of the business, it's a risk that as an investor we have to understand and spend a lot of time thinking about when making an investment. But it's a great question. Thank you.
Hey Jay, my name is Shane, second year MBA. Thank you so much for being here.
Nice to meet you, Shane.
My question is, you mentioned using data to make investment decisions, but if you only use data, you might miss out on a once in a lifetime opportunity. So how do you balance looking at the data, but also trusting maybe your intuition, your gut feeling? And my second question is, at dinner tonight with Scooter Braun, what are you going to talk about?
I'll hit the second one after. So I would say, as a general matter, we use our experience. We use the decades and decades of collective experience that we have as a team to understand the macro trends that are providing the tailwinds and the current. We like to invest in businesses where the current is behind them, not the current coming into it. So we're trying to figure out what will be driving growth for businesses across all sectors. We start with that macro. We narrow it into the sectors and trends that we think are the most attractive, and then we'll identify assets that we think are both attractive and potentially actionable for us. We go out and we try to build relationships with the founders and executives who own and lead those businesses. And for every investment that we ultimately make, we have to spend time with dozens and dozens and dozens of people who run businesses that we'll never have the opportunity to invest behind. That is where I think the intuition and the gut is most important, because we have, our time is scarce. It's our scarcest resource. So I can't be spending my time on things that will never turn into an investment opportunity, or that I'll never learn something from, or that I don't think is actually an attractive investment. I need to channel myself and my team's resources in the places that are ultimately, I believe, based on our intuition and experience, going to result in good outcomes. But ultimately, the world that we live in, the consumer is the most powerful component of the overall equation. And if it doesn't matter what I think about a brand. In fact, I tell people all the time, there are a lot of brands that I think are fabulous as a consumer, but they would be terrible investments. There are a lot of wonderful investments to make where I would never be the consumer. And if I let my own personal taste and preference and gut guide my decision making, that's actually one of the biggest hazards of what we do. And it's why I emphasize data and consumer research and focus groups. And it ranges. It's not all just like down to the third decimal point to make an investment decision. It's a range of sort of qualitative and quantitative data that we piece together and interpret to ultimately guide the investment decision. But at the end of the day, if in the consumer data we do not see permission from the consumer who has the money, and she parts with her money very, very wisely, if we do not see from her desire for that brand to be in more places and more categories and a bigger and bigger part of her life, then we can't underwrite a growth plan, even if I think it's a great idea. So I don't want to overemphasize data, because intuition and experience are really important. But at the end of the day, we have to listen to the consumer. And I've started many consumer research projects in my career on deals that I've worked really hard to build a relationship with a founder. I've spent months or years gaining their trust and gaining their support and getting to the point where they say, okay, we'll open the doors and let you come in and do due diligence on our business. And we go do that and we make a deal and we say, we're going to invest in your company, but we just need to do our due diligence now. And then we go out and field that consumer research and a very different answer comes back. It is really hard after all that hard work to put your pencil down at that point in time, but you have to have the discipline to do it. And I've it's hard, and we've done it many times, but you just have to listen to the consumer. At dinner tonight with Scooter, I can't wait to see him. He's a really good friend, and we invested in his business back in 2017. We bought about a third of it. We put some additional capital into his business about a year and a half later to help acquire a record label called Big Machine Label Group, which I don't know if any of you in the room are Swifties, but that is the record label that had signed Taylor Swift. And we captured some media attention when we made that investment. We ultimately sold Taylor Swift's master recordings to Shamrock, and then we subsequently sold the remainder of Ithaca, which is Scooter's business, to a Korean entertainment company called Hybe. Scooter remains it was a great deal for our investors and one that I'm really proud of. We worked really hard on it, and Scooter was a phenomenal partner. And I'm really looking forward to seeing him. I don't plan to talk about work. I plan to talk about his kids and our personal lives and reconnecting with my husband and hanging out and enjoying a nice dinner together and honoring him for the hard work that he's been doing.
I want to tell a little story. When we bought Beats by Dr. Dre, I remember Jay was the advocate for this. And he basically, this was
2013.
a while ago, okay? He basically was making the argument, headphones are a new category. They were these giant headphones. This is the future. Oh, you have them, Charlotte.
Thank you.
And there is brand value also in this streaming business that they had, which ultimately became Apple Music. And remember, the decision maker, who is also a good friend of ours, who's my age, probably doesn't know who Ariana Grande is either. He basically was saying, this is a hoax, this is a fad, okay? We can't do this because, okay, headphones may be hot now, but in 2 years they're gonna go away. And Jay was like, this is a good investment, let's do it, and Jay was right. I remember the fellow came in my office one day and he said, I think we're gonna do this deal. I said, okay, what changed your mind? He said, well, I have a 16-year-old who has been asking me for the last 4 days whether his FedEx came. Every day, did my FedEx come? No, it didn't come. Did my FedEx come? Finally, the FedEx came, and he said, by the way, what do you have in there? And the kid said, Beats headphones. So that gets to your point that Jay saw the data, but ultimately there was a gut decision based on a consumer experience. So you remember that?
I do. Very well. We invested $512 million into Beats by Dr. Dre in October of 2013. It was not a decision that rightfully was taken lightly. We took those decisions very seriously. You know, Carlyle and my firm, we manage the money of pension funds and retirement funds and people who depend on our ability to deliver great outcomes for them. So you don't make those decisions lightly. And to invest $512 million in that business it turned out really well for us, but we have to be incredibly diligent about the way we make those decisions over time.
Well, this has been a great conversation. I'm getting the hook from the side there.
So one more.
We're going to have a few minutes afterwards to come up. You can ask some questions individually, but then you have to get out the door to your dinner. But I just want to thank you on behalf of American University and the Kogod School of Business for coming today and speaking with us.
Thank you all. Really appreciate you having me. Thank you. I appreciate it. Thanks a lot.
Thank you so much.
Thanks.